What is up, people? Welcome into another edition of Ask Gallant Anything, which you can check out on a variety of different platforms. Twitch, Gallant says. Twitter /Periscope @Gallant says. Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, my other Facebook profile. And on YouTube, my channel on that one is Paul Gallant. I don't know how to change it to Gallant says. Whatever. We'll work on that later. Here's how it works. I'm going to deliver you a couple of takes, and then I'm going to move on to your questions, which you can ask. And as you can see in the sidebar to my left right there, you'll get to keep an eye on all the questions that get asked through all of those different platforms. Let's start off talking about something that Danny and I discussed on this morning's edition of Danny and Gallant. The idea of bringing back Josh Gordon to the Seattle Seahawks for what would likely be chance number, I don't know, what are we at now? 6, 7? I've actually lost track. And if you combine those chances, the second chances that he's gotten at Baylor, that he got in the NFL with the Browns, that he got with the Patriots, this would be an unbelievable amount of second chances. Now, it's not like he's done anything particularly wrong outside of let substance abuse get in the way of his life, which is sad. It gets made fun of a lot. It's easy to make fun of. Haha, stay off the weed. It ain't that easy for him. And because of that, I legitimately do feel bad for him. And when I think a little bit further about it, is that really something that should keep somebody out of the NFL? I don't think that should keep people out. And I've said this before. If you listen to my old radio program, Gallant at Night in Houston, Texas, I was very adamant about this. If you're someone that's done something violent, you're out of the league. I don't want you getting a second chance. But when it's something like this, something that, for some, myself included, smoking the pot, doing drugs, I feel like that's a personal choice. That's a personal responsibility. Testing positive for something like that, I don't really think that the NFL should have a say as far as punishment or kicking somebody out or suspending somebody because of issues like that, whether it's alcoholism or marijuana, other drugs. I feel like that is up to the individuals themselves. But when it comes to something like violence, I do think that the act of anyone doing that, you should not get an opportunity, again, to play in the league. It is an opportunity, I believe. Maybe that's a bit of a double standard, but whatever. That's how I feel. I look at Josh Gordon, and, I mean, he's so talented still. If you watched him play with the Seahawks last season when he came on midseason after a not very good start in New England, and he was cut, partly due, I think, to the fact that something had happened. Perhaps he had fallen back on some of the old habits that tick people in Cleveland off, showing up late. Honestly, if New England gives you a second chance and you blow it, there's probably a good reason for them to move on from you. He tested positive for a couple of different things. It wasn't just for a substance of abuse. It was also for performance enhancement drugs. And you add those two things together and you're like, okay, well, maybe Roger Goodell's going to give him a suspension this coming season. If he doesn't give him a suspension this coming season, and he didn't give him a suspension going into last year after he had tested positive for substances of abuse with New England, Roger Goodell seems to like him for whatever reason. So maybe there's a chance he doesn't get suspended. But if you bring him on, I feel like you've given him so many chances, it doesn't really make sense to give him another one. You got guys on the roster who have been busting their chops for opportunities to play in the NFL for years and years and years. And let's just take a look at some of the guys at the bottom of this Seahawks draft class this past year. Freddie Swain and Stephen Sullivan. Their 6th and their 7th round pick. Freddie Swain's a wide receiver out of Florida, chomp chomp. And Stephen Sullivan's a wide receiver / tight end out of LSU. I have no idea if those guys are going to end up being good professionals. And likely, they will not be anywhere close to Josh Gordon, let alone possibly even making the Seahawks roster. There's a very good chance that's not going to happen. But Josh Gordon has had so many opportunities, and he has no one to blame but himself for these opportunities. And even if his lawyer gave for a reason, as far as his relapse, that his brother had died, which I think legitimately is about as understandable of a reason as there is for someone to just all of a sudden fall off the wagon and turn to substances of abuse. Really, that's got to be difficult. I can only imagine if someone in my family had something tragic happen to them, how I would handle it. I know that myself, I have issues with moderation, whether it's video games or it's the occasional drink. Those are things that sometimes it's hard for me to put away, especially when I'm not happy and not feeling good about myself. But those are excuses that you're making for Josh Gordon when you're doing that. And I hate to be so callous and say it like that, because I do want to see this guy get another opportunity. He seems like a good person. He seems to be well liked. But when you keep on blowing chance after chance after chance, are you really helping that person out by giving them another opportunity? I understand we're talking about addiction, and some people this morning said, well, with someone with addiction, you just keep on giving that person chance after chance after chance, and it makes sense. But I feel like that's the case for family members. Is that the case for an NFL team? The NFL team is not a charity. These spots, 53 per team, I mean, they are hard-earned. And it's not just earned by being a phenomenal talent. It's also earned by showing up to work. It's also earned by working hard. It's also earned by being reliable. And I feel like bringing Josh Gordon back in, you know what's going to happen at the end. It's cynical to think this way, but you thought he wasn't going to have anything happen to him with the Seahawks, and it did. And look, maybe it's possible that this is something that took place while he was in New England, both of them. The PED test positive or the substance of abuse test positive. But whatever the case, it still happened, and it's happened a lot. And do you really think it's not going to happen again? Is it worth it to have Josh Gordon for 2, 3, 4 games, if we're being realistic, maybe even up to the playoffs, only for him to all of a sudden be completely unplugged from the roster? I have a hard time saying yes to it. In fact, I'm just going to say no to it. A couple of questions. First one from Ryan. Case by case, bring him back. But isn't this case pretty cut and dry in terms of this is a guy who gets a lot of second chances and he can't take advantage of them? So why does he deserve a second chance? And I know the idea of deserve, it's very subjective. And it's not like he's Greg Hardy or someone like Aldon Smith, who, by the way, got another chance in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys, despite his issues with alcohol and also a violent incident that took place possibly because of alcohol just a couple of years ago. I'd like to see him get another opportunity. It's one of those weird things where, yeah, I want to see him back in the league, but I just don't feel like the Seahawks are the team to give him that chance. And if you can't trust him and you still bring him back anyway, and then he spurns you, what are you showing to the rest of the roster? And look, this is a locker room that seems pretty tight and seems also to be, I think, a very, very low-key, chill locker room, if you will, compared to what the Seahawks used to be when they had a lot of boisterous people, whether it was Richard Sherman or Doug Baldwin, Michael Bennett. Things have definitely changed on that front. I don't think that Josh Gordon is all of a sudden going to poison the locker room like he's a Randy Moss or something like that if he were to be brought in. But it's more, what are you showing the rest of your team when you're giving this guy another chance? Yes, he's talented. Yes, that catch he had against the Panthers was insane. But, again, it's like a ticking time bomb. You know it's going to happen once again. Randy asks a question. Is it within the rules? How could you not bring him back? Well, I mean, per the collective bargaining agreement, the Oski-Woski is legal. Now, I don't know how that applies to Josh Gordon because he is someone who has repeatedly failed the test. And if that maybe if he tests positive for something else, if that means he's going to face the same punishments that he had in the past, which were full season suspensions. But technically, going forward, weed is in the rules. But here's the thing. If you go to this GQ article that was written about Josh Gordon back in 2017, it's not just about the weed. And this goes back a long way, and it's really tragic. It really is sad. This is going back to like his teens, early teens. And some of the things that the guy's gone through have been extremely difficult, and you can see why he maybe turned to drugs of dependence. But again, the NFL's not a charity. I wish it was. And here's the other thing, too. I'm not making the decisions here. If you want to see Josh Gordon back, you're likely going to see Josh Gordon back with the Seahawks. Pete Carroll is fatally optimistic. He even tells us that. He really strongly believes in giving people as many opportunities as they can to better themselves. It's one of the things I really like about him. And I think that's pretty likely that Josh Gordon will be back on the Seahawks roster this coming season. He applied for reinstatement. We'll see what the NFL does. Truth Hurts tweets in, Josh caught the ball every time it was thrown to him. He's a good guy. Never heard any violence. You're right. And he's got some hands. And I mean, that guy's a big body. Imagine trying to knock that guy off of a slant. He's just big. And you already got DK Metcalf. I mean, you might have the two most ripped, huge wide receiver combination in the National Football League. Ian asks this question before we move on to our next topic about Jamal Adams. Has Russell Wilson's contract destroyed any chance of having a tangible Super Bowl run? I don't buy that at all. Not one little bit. You have to pay quarterbacks money in this league. The problem for the Seahawks has not been Russell Wilson's contract, because I think that they've been pretty responsible. I think it's been another contract. I don't particularly like the Bobby Wagner contract. I understand why they gave it to him. He is a really good middle linebacker. He is a really important leader in the locker room. But linebackers don't have the same impact that they used to in the NFL. They just don't. And last year you saw it. He was not a factor in coverage despite the amount of times that the Seahawks decided to keep their base 4-3 defense on the field. And because of that, I feel like that hurt them. But again, it's not his contract either that's necessarily the problem. You got to look at the last couple of draft classes. The Seahawks had about 6 second and third round picks in the 2017 draft, and the only guy that's given you anything of those picks was Shaquille Griffin. You should have gotten some more there. You take a look at last year's draft class. LJ Collier's your first round pick, and while there were some good pieces after that, I like Marquise Blair's promise. DK Metcalf was awesome, and then after that, I think what you got from Cody Barton last year was a pretty good start. But the drafts have not been turning over the kind of talent that John Schneider and Pete Carroll turned over early on during the Seahawks run. And I mean, that's why they had the Super Bowl run that they did. You're finding guys like Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman in the back of the draft, off the street, Doug Baldwin. You found and hit the lottery on a lot of different guys. And that's one of the things about the NFL. The NFL, there is a lot of luck involved. All right, the other thing I wanted to dive into. The New York Jets might have to trade Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams has not been happy with the New York Jets over the last year or so. I think it was right around the trade deadline last year that he found out that he may have been floated for a potential trade by New York, and he found out about it and he was angry. He's like, I'm a franchise player. Why are you shopping me? Why are you trading me? They have not also been really, I think, forward when it comes to giving him a long-term extension. And since Jamal Adams is a first-round pick, this fourth year of his contract that he is going into will be followed by a fifth-year option. So he's under control with the Jets for 2 more years. And he doesn't have any leverage right now. Players with the new collective bargaining agreement completely lost the ability to hold out to potentially create some sort of change. If you don't show up for training camp and if you don't show up for the regular season, I mean, you're not going to advance a year towards free agency. They call it accruement. So if you don't get that, then you ultimately end up being a restricted free agent at the end of the contract, which means that the team still has your rights. It's kind of messed up. I'm not a big fan of how the NFL works on that front. But Jamal Adams wants out. Why? I'm assuming it's because of the contract details, but it also has to do with the fact he's on the New York Jets. The Jets are not a well-run organization. I think if you're Jamal Adams and you're looking around the room and you're seeing Sam Darnold, supposedly the future, you're thinking to yourself, I don't think this one's going to work out so well. And look, I don't think Jamal Adams is maybe as close to the top of the NFL as far as safeties goes as he thinks he is. Very impactful as a blitzer, but only 2 interceptions in his career. One of them was off Jared Stidham, who was in relief duty of Tom Brady during a game where New England was blowing out the Jets last year. There needs to be a little bit more, I think, on that front in terms of plays and production. But for the most part, the guy is thought of as a very good player. And I'm not going to say that he's anything but a very good player. Great? I'm not sure. But we've seen what this Seahawks defense can do when it gets a safety that's a plus player. When they brought in Quandre Diggs this past season, Quandre Diggs was really, really good. He really was. And Quandre Diggs is a guy who was basically an afterthought in Detroit. They were putting him at nickel cornerback. He was not happy there. They trade him here, and I mean, he was great. He gave that back end some really desperately needed stability in the second half of the year. Jeez, remember Tedrick Thompson trying to catch passes and falling like he was Raheem Moore in that game between that playoff game between the Broncos and the Ravens back in 2012? Was it 2013? It was the 2012 season, 2013 playoffs, I believe. He just falls on his ass while he's trying to catch an interception. Wasn't good. And that was what happened to Tedrick Thompson. So you bring in Quandre Diggs, great. Imagine a secondary featuring Quandre Diggs, and at strong safety you have Jamal Adams, who is very accomplished as a blitzer. Man, that's a really good combination. And I mean, It's about as close as you're going to possibly get to having a safety core the way that the Seahawks did with Earl Thomas, one of the, a one in a decade, a 1 in 20 years kind of safety. Maybe 20 years is too much. 1 in 10 years kind of safety, though. I mean, he was, I think, the best safety post Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu in the NFL. And you had Cam Chancellor, who's just an absolute monster, just a giant human being that can pulverize people. When you have a combination like that, and you think to yourself, all right, well, maybe the Legion of Boom can come back if we get another safety, then that's an idea to potentially bring in Jamal Adams. But they're going to ask for a lot. They're going to ask for probably multiple first-round picks for Jamal Adams. Then you're going to have to think about giving him that extension. I think the Jets have actually wanted a first and 2 seconds in exchange for Adams. Maybe you could finagle away where you can trade a first and a second and a player or something like that. But I'm not making a move on Jamal Adams right now. If the Jets aren't going to make a move, let the situation continue to marinate or fester. Because next year, going into next offseason, when he's in the last year of his contract, that 5th-year option, and the Jets are going to have to think about the idea, do we want to franchise tag him? Is franchise tagging him going to help us out? That's a situation I'm interested in, because going into the year after this coming season, going into the 2021 season, you could maybe do what the Seahawks did with Jadeveon Clowney, which was wait until the absolute last minute, send a trade offer of like a mid-round draft pick and maybe a couple of other players as well, and bring in Jamal Adams as a rental. Jamal Adams as a rental, I'm 100% aboard for that, but I'm not doing it until 2021. Randy asks, speaking of Jadeveon Clowney, everything done on the Jadeveon Clowney front? I don't know definitively that his time in Seattle is done. I don't know what other team is going to give him an offer that's on the same level as what Seattle can give him. So I'm not just talking about from a financial perspective, because the Browns have given him supposedly the biggest contract offer. But the Browns are the Browns. They got a new head coach. They do not definitively have a quarterback based off of what we saw from Baker Mayfield, even though I like Mayfield. That was a big step back that he had last year. Clowney has been through the dark days, as my Houston followers can acknowledge. I mean, my goodness, playing with some of the quarterbacks that he played with, he wants to be, I think, on a team that actually has a legitimate shot at winning. And with that in mind, I feel like that only leaves a couple of options for him. Teams with good quarterbacks. The other team that's interested in him is supposedly the Tennessee Titans, but I have a couple of questions about them. First off, does Jadeveon Clowney think Ryan Tannehill's a good quarterback? I hope he doesn't, because I don't think Ryan Tannehill's a good quarterback. I think he had a nice finish to last year, but I feel like he's nothing more than average at best. We really think that that's going to continue? All those games that he played against tomato cans where he had Derrick Henry also running for like 140 yards plus? Well, you really think that's going to happen again? I am very skeptical of that. But also, you have to think about this. Mike Vrabel, who used to be Clowney's linebacker coach in Houston and the defensive coordinator of the Texans, very familiar with Jadeveon Clowney. He was not the biggest fan of Clowney's off-the-field stuff. He was not the biggest fan of his work ethic. He did not feel great about Jadeveon Clowney and the things that he was doing off the field to get better. And with that in mind, you really think that he's going to bring that guy in as a head coach and be happy with potentially giving him a long-term extension like he wants? So if Tennessee and Cleveland are the only other alternatives for Clowney, I could very well see him coming back into the fold with Seattle. Because I feel like the Seahawks being the better team than both of them, largely due to having Russell Wilson. I know that there's an argument to be made that Tennessee's more talented, that even Cleveland's more talented. But when it comes to the quarterback side of things, I think that's a big factor for him. And I do think that there is still a chance that he comes back. How likely is it, honestly, off the top of my head? I do not know. I do not know the answer to that. Because I also don't know if the Seahawks have just completely walked away from the table and they're not going to make another offer. But you would think that as this offseason continues that they would think about it. That's for sure. All right, you know how to do it. Ask me anything. You can ask me any question on Twitter, on Facebook, I guess it's on Periscope for the Twitter side of things. Periscope, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right, so seems like we're out of questions on that front. Just bummed out by the lack of participation today. So I'm going to start off with a question that I was going to ask myself. Paul, why do you hate random regions of the country the way that you do? Like, for example, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Iowa, Arkansas, Oklahoma. It's a good question because I haven't been to any of those places. Although I have been to Oklahoma because that's where Dallas is. But I don't have legitimate reasons to hate any of them outside of sports. That is legitimately it. The reason that I don't like Tennessee has a lot to do with their stupid NFL fans that live in that city. Yes, I said stupid. You guys don't understand how the NFL works. My goodness, you thought Marcus Mariota was good, and you kept that going for a while. And you came in my mentions whenever I said, that guy's not good. And you denied it, and you denied it, and you denied it. And now I'm sure you're telling yourselves that Ryan Tannehill's the truth. Can't wait to see you guys open up that box of presents and find out just exactly what he is. Can't wait. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I once did some of the Tennessee Titans beat reporters' jobs. I reported that Jake Locker was getting benched for Zach Mettenberger, and I dealt with an entire day of mean tweets from people in Tennessee. I don't want to break news. That's not my job. Ugh, gross. That's not me. Too much pressure, too much stress. You got to confirm things. Sorry, that's for professionals. That ain't for me. Look at me. I'm wearing a shirt with a bunch of tigers on it. Friday. Florida Shirt Friday. So that rubbed me the wrong way with Tennessee. The Volunteers stink. They haven't been good in forever. Stop acting like that's going to be a thing again. Pretty much all my dislike of the state of Tennessee has to do with sports. I would like to go to Nashville. Nashville seems like a cool place. Poe, what about Indianapolis? I hate the Colts. Hate them, hate them, hate them, hate them, hate them, hate them, hate them. Grew up hating them because they were the New England Patriots' arch rival. There was nothing worse than the 2006 AFC Championship game when the New England Patriots had a 21-3 lead after Peyton Manning threw a pick six, and they blew it and they lost. And then the Colts, despite a mediocre at best game from Peyton Manning, who somehow won MVP, beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. It's one of the most frustrating losses as a sports fan I can remember, because after that win over the San Diego Chargers the week before, it was like, wow, they just beat the best team in the NFL, despite not being that good. They can beat anybody. So there you go. As far as the other places, Arkansas actually has nothing to do with sports. It's entirely personal. I just hate the entire state. Is it because of one person? Maybe. What else do we have? Oh yeah, Oklahoma. That's where Dallas is. Dallas is located in Oklahoma. And Dallas acts like it is this place that is like the Los Angeles of the South. I'm sorry, you're just an afterthought. I've said this, I think, on the last couple of Ask Gallant Anything. So we're not going to go any further than that on this one. Philip Flowers asks, what about the Texans trading for Jamal Adams or bringing Clowney back? They're not going to bring Clowney back because I think that it takes two to tango, and I don't know that Clowney's going to want to come back if he's not getting a long-term deal, regardless of how he feels about Bill O'Brien. And also, I mean, Bill O'Brien felt the same way that Mike Vrabel did about Clowney and his off-the-field stuff. They would have given him a long-term extension if he had done some of the things that they wanted. And there's also the concern about his knee. I don't know that the Texans should even really want that, even though their pass rush has not been very good over the past 16 games. And you know, you can say the same thing about the Seattle Seahawks, too. Like, both teams could use this guy, and yet he is still out there. Something's going on. No matter how much I like him and no matter how good I think he was last year, despite just 3.5 sacks. And he was, for those who are in Houston and watching this right now, he was really good. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because I watched it firsthand, and that guy was about as disruptive as he's always been. The sack numbers just weren't there, which was another problem in Houston. He was always disruptive, but the sacks, they did not come. It's not all about sacks, people. It is not all about sacks. But I have a hard time seeing Clowney going there. The Texans trading for Jamal Adams. I mean, what are they going to trade? What do they have left? I know first-round picks. That's for damn sure. So I don't see that happening. Honestly, I don't think anyone's going to end up trading for Jamal Adams because the Jets have all the power right now. Adams can't really force their hand either, because Adams is someone who is in this situation where, again, he can't hold out and he can't really force their hand on anything. He can't stop playing because it's not going to help him out. All right. Ian asked this question. I think this was on Twitter. I don't know why I can't see this. Hang on a second. This question is... With both G5 and Power 5 schools having cases of the Rona, how do you see the NCAA football landscape changing? Football right now seems to have its head stuck in the sand as far as the actual elephant in the room, the massive elephant in the room, which is that we don't know anything about coronavirus. We really don't. One day, we're hearing that masks aren't essential. The next day, we're hearing that they are. One day, we're hearing that they didn't want you to wear masks because They didn't have enough masks to go around. The other day we're hearing, okay, well, it's okay to move on from it. I don't know what to believe and what not to believe anymore. And we saw with the NFL, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he said, like, I don't know how the NFL is going to work without some sort of a bubble system. And then Alan Sills, doctor who I think is for the NFL, said, hang on, buddy, as they say in Texas, bless your heart, but we've got this figured out. And then he said a couple of things that they could do and they might do and they should do. Well, none of those are actually concrete actions. And that's the NFL. The NFL has so much money. It's easy to regulate 32 teams as well. Where with college, you have different conferences and different regions and different governments in those different regions and different governments affecting the way that things are going. I mean, like, look at the Pac-12 on the West Coast. California has now mandated you got to wear that mask out in the open all the time. But is that different for college football? It's impossible to physically distance, to socially distance yourself, physically distance yourself when you're playing a game like this. You're going to sweat on each other at the very least. You're going to be in the same locker rooms. A lot of these locker rooms are cramped. A lot of these locker rooms are not what Oregon has or what an NFL team has. They're just like these crowded, gross areas that could be ripe with staph, like we saw from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2013. Like, there's some real logistical challenges that have a lot to do with finances that all these teams are going to have to overcome. All these schools are going to have to overcome. I feel like the teams that make money, they're going to play. But I don't think it's a definitive thing that the teams that are in non-Power 5 conferences play. Because if there's no TV money that's forcing them to get back out there, then what's the incentive and how are they going to be able to finance all of these potential things that they're going to need to take care of along the way? I don't know the answer to that. What else do we got? Scooby-doop-dooba-doo-wop, shibbledy-doop, Scooby-doo-boop, boop-boop-boop-boop-boop. Paul, what's going on with baseball right now? A lot of BS. I am tired of the back and forth between Rob Manfred and the Players Association. My biggest issue right now is that Rob Manfred is just lying to you. He's lying to me. He's acting like we are not smart. But we shouldn't direct our anger at Rob Manfred. We should direct our anger at baseball's owners who are hiding behind Rob Manfred, who is a human meat shield right now. For those who've played Gears of War, you know what I'm talking about. You can like pick up a dead body, hold it in front of you. Bullets basically get absorbed by the dead body. That game was weird. Like, when someone dies, really, like, everyone turns into hamburger meat whenever they started to get shot. Manfred is standing in the way of the owners. There are 6 to 8 owners who do not want to play right now. And you would think that after Manfred had proposed a 60-game season with prorated salaries, that the Players Association saying, all right, well, how about 70? You would think that there would maybe be some sort of thought by Manfred. Okay, how do we make this work? Manfred refused it immediately. We're talking about a difference of 10 games. 10! That's it! And this guy, he doesn't even want to hear an offer of 10 more games. A proposal of 10 more games. It's 10. How much is it going to cost? You're going to lose money this year, baseball owners. You're going to lose money. You're already losing the collective interest of this entire country. I mean, I don't like baseball personally. I watch it, I cover it, I know what I'm talking about when I talk about it, but not a fan. And I know there are a lot of people like me right now, they don't even miss the sport. So keep doing this. See how it goes for you. What else do we have? Oh, this one is from Stacey Ross, host of Tom, Jake, and Stacey, which you can hear starting at noon right here on 710. Well, hang on, not right here. This is technically like the studio that I do to do my shows from 710 ESPN Seattle. But she hosts Tom, Jake, and Stacey, which is noon to 3 on 710. So they got a show coming up. They'll be talking about some news like Colby Parkinson needing a Jones fracture surgery. Gosh, that stinks. 2 guys in the NFL in like a day needed Jones fracture surgery. First off, it's Deebo Samuel. This bums me out. I love Deebo Samuel. I think he's a great player. I don't care that he plays for the San Francisco 49ers. He is physical. He is tough. He runs people over. He blocks. He can run as a running back. He can be a great receiver after the catch. The guy's awesome. He killed the Seahawks this past season. I think it was something like 14 catches for 200-plus yards. He had a touchdown run on a reverse as well. Guy's really good. It's a bummer that he's gotten this injury. It's like a 12 to 16-week recovery time, but We heard from Michael Bumpus, former NFL wide receiver who had a Jones fracture when he was playing in the NFL. Like, this is a tough one to come back from. It basically was the death knell for his career. At least he says it was never the same after the fact. It always hurt a little bit. We saw Greg Olsen have issues with it in the last couple of seasons. I think he injured it in 2017, got surgery on it, came back later that year. 2018, he plays again. He suffers the injury again early on, doesn't have surgery on it, re-aggravates it again. So he spent like 2 years trying to get through it. Sammy Watkins had issues with it that kept him from being, I think, a plus player for 2 years. Des Bryant's had it. Kept him out like 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so. He came back, but he needed to have surgery on it again. Same thing with Julian Edelman. It is a bad injury for a wide receiver to suffer. I mean, it's one of the most important parts of your body when you're playing any sport, but you plant so hard on those feet and you want to feel confident that you're not going to re-injure it. Samuel's likely going to have another surgery on this, especially if he starts the season and it's just freshly recovered. And they're saying, all right, he's going to be back in 10 weeks. I don't know. I don't know about that. All right, sorry. I got to get to Stacy's question. Who's the office bully and why is it me? Stacy clearly thinks this about herself, so I'm just gonna let her fall on this sword. Stacy is a very fun conversation, and basically at 710 ESPN Seattle, we have this thing called the Sports Pit, which is essentially a bunch of offices that are all in a circle, and I like to stay there after the show because I'll say it. I don't have a lot of friends here, so I like to sit and chat and kibitz with the people. And I just sit there and I expound on sports takes and things of that nature while I'm hanging out with all these people. And Stacy will come in and Stacy just like completely redirects and changes the conversation as soon as she walks in. As soon as she walks in. And I enjoy it, but like she's going to take command of the conversation right away. And it's usually going to be something about like reality TV. But here's the thing. I like reality TV. So we can go down some rabbit holes with that. By the way, I have been watching some interesting shows on television of late. Number one, I guess this is a movie. I watched 365. It was recommended to me by Netflix. I did not think I was going to end up watching a porno, but that's what it was essentially. It's like a bunch of montages in a subtitle-heavy movie with a lot of porn. I'm guessing this is what, or borderline porn. I'm guessing this is what 50 Shades of Grey was like. The plot, there was none. And it ends in a really confusing way. If you really want to hate watch something, go ahead. It's one of those movies that definitely deserves the Rift Tracks treatment. I have started 5 Bloods. I'm like 9. How far am I into it? I'm like an hour in. It's been okay. I'm supposing the action picks up. It's 2.5 hours. I feel like that's too long for movies these days. But that's also because I have a short attention span. Kyle asks, Paul, have you heard of the Yacht Week? Yes, you ask this question every single week. Ask a better question. Goodness gracious me, oh my. All right, I think that's it. Not a lot of questions today, so that means that we might have to continue to tinker with the time that we do this. Thank you very much for those who did tune in. Make sure that you're following all the socials at Gallant Says on Twitter, Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports. You can add me on Facebook as well. That's cool. Instagram, Gallant Says. Twitch, Gallant Says. YouTube, search my name, Paul Gallant, and Twitch also, Gallant Says. We will be back at it on Monday with a new Danny and Gallant. We will have a Ken Griffey Jr. documentary at 5 o'clock Pacific time on Sunday to recap. I'm very excited to see that. I am trying my best to learn Seattle sports history as quickly as I can, and reading up on Ken Griffey Jr. in this book, Left Field by Art Thiel, has been something else. I just finished a chapter on him. And honestly, I don't know a whole lot about the guy. I really don't. I didn't get to watch a lot of him outside of the occasional playoff runs that the Mariners made, which were not many. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we get some promising news on the baseball front. I'm not optimistic. And we get some more clarity on the NFL side of things too, because they got some real questions to answer. I think John Harbaugh and Sean McVay are totally warranted when they ask, like, how is this going to work? Because I don't know the answer to that. And here's the reality. No one knows the answer to that. Happy Juneteenth. Stay safe this weekend. Have a good one. And until Monday.